Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to Alaska Weather. This is your Thursday edition. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is January 22nd, 2015. And boy, do we have a show for you tonight. Winter is finally starting, and we'll be on our way with our winter weather advisories and warnings in just a moment for your aviation and public forecasts as well. Also, when we're not here, you can always get our information at www.arh.noaa.gov. Our information from the Juneau, Anchorage, and Fairbanks offices. All of our information is gathered on this website, as well as the social websites for Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can always get our information by calling the Weather Information Line at 1-800-472-0391. Now on to the cold topics of the day. As we look at this map here, this is our watch warnings and advisories map. And across the area covered mostly in yellow, those are advisories, not meaning all the same advisories or the start times and stop times. They differ as well. So we try to go in depth through and explain this map. Also, the red areas are the warnings that we have issued for the area. So let's start with those. And we have some red highlighted areas from the Denali National Park on over towards the eastern Alaska range, and this is for snow. This is starting from 9 p.m. tonight, and this runs through 6 p.m. tomorrow night for the eastern Alaska range, 9 p.m. tomorrow night for the Denali National Park area for snow. That's going to be fall. We're expecting between 10 to 14 inches in those areas, which may cause travel hazards and visibility at times with heavy snow reducing visibilities. Now across the west, let's work our way from west to east here. Across the Kuskokwim River area, the delta, and including the valley, we're expecting some gusty winds through these areas with wind chills dropping down to minus 30 to minus 40 degrees. And this is out until midnight tonight. Across much of south central here, we have highlighted for winter weather advisories for snow. Most of these areas, like I said, are for snow ranging in between 4 to 8 inches across the western Kenai to 5 to 12 inches across the Susitna Valley and on over to the Copper River Valley between 4 to 8 inches. And this is out through the night tonight, and it's already started, and across the Anchorage area as well, and down over towards Valdez and Thompson Pass. This area is also under a winter weather advisory, and this is for snow and also for freezing rain in the town of Valdez. They might start off a little bit warmer and have some rain mixing in, so up to 2/10 of an inch of rain can be expected there. On up towards the north of the Alaska range from Fairbanks on over to Eagle, winter weather advisories for these locations as well starting tonight, and they are going to run into the day on Friday. So be aware these advisories may be extended in times. You can check our information, like I said, going to our website at www.arh.noaa.gov. Now on to the weather. Out towards the west, taking a quick peek here, we can mainly just see high pressure is in control of the bearing. So colder temperatures here, main circulation with low pressure just to the south of the eastern area of the Aleutians. We have a little bit of a spin here, but the main concern is back closer to home, where we have rain that has been moving through the southeast earlier today. Most of that has pushed to the north, and we're getting some snow across the Copper River Valley area, putting this into motion one more time, you can see the main low center is just to the south of the Alaska Peninsula at this time, but the frontal boundary has pushed all the way up into the south central areas back towards Eagle. Now across the northern areas of the state, the darker gray clouds are mainly to the north across the Brooks Range and over towards the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. This is just colder temperatures and mostly clear skies. We're across much of the western coastal areas into the western part of the Bering. So here's the frontal boundary that's draped across the southern areas of the state with some rain occurring behind this frontal system. And then we have another system that was just to the south of the Gulf of Alaska. So snow is occurring along the frontal boundary as it pushed north, and rain across the Gulf continued with a mix of rain and snow near the Kodiak area and snow up across the Cook Inlet. And then all along the frontal boundary, temperatures cold enough to be all snow. Across the Aleutian chain, just a weak disturbance moving through, mainly ridging pattern out this way. So a mix of rain and snow along the chain, mainly dry conditions across the western areas, with some light snow just occurring across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast and along the Seward Peninsula. Now heading into your forecast for tonight, we will see that continuation of snow across the south central areas into the eastern interior and increasing intensity along this frontal boundary as a wave comes from an upper level disturbance from the northwest. Now we expect the conditions to stay the same across the north and western coasts, and then across the Alaska Peninsula, this cold air mass is going to start advecting a little bit further to the south. So this will change over to a rain-snow mix over the Alaska Peninsula, possible rain in the overnight hours for Kodiak. So we'll expect some rain just to the east of this system as another frontal push surges up from the North Pacific. So the continued rain chances, we might see a little bit lighter pattern across the southeast during the overnight hours, but that will change as we head into the weekend. So snow will continue also across the Copper River Basin and just inland of the Yakutat area, Yakutat, and back towards the southeastern areas. They are still seeing rain. So mainly snow, and that will continue in the same pattern as this frontal boundary doesn't move its location. So mainly just the colder air continuing to seep closer to the low center that's near Kodiak Island. This will change across the western Gulf to mainly a rain-snow mix, so we'll eventually see it getting cold enough to change over to snow for Kodiak even, and possibly the eastern part of the peninsula. So snow intensity will taper off during the day on Friday, probably later in the afternoon, so we'll see a break in the snow conditions. I know that our advisories are pretty much running through late Friday night into Saturday for most locations. And that is because we have another wave that's going to come across. An upper level low will be just off the eastern Beaufort Seacoast on Friday, and that will send a wave across the western areas of the state. So a little bit of a break sometime during the day on Friday, probably in the afternoon hours. At the same time, this other low pressure system from the northeastern Pacific is going to move another rain system across the southeast. So they'll be seeing another round of rain for the southeast and across the northern Gulf waters tomorrow. Cold temperatures will continue. However, the advisories should drop off at midnight tonight for the southwest as the gradient behind this pressure system begins to weaken and the main gradient stays across the Cook Inlet and towards the Kodiak Island and western Gulf. So gusty winds along these locations, and across the northwest a little bit of a break of snow pattern except for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. Expect some areas of patchy fog, icy fog possibly during the day on Friday as this colder air mass continues to seep down across the Bering. So light showery conditions across the Bering for Friday and continuing for Saturday. Not much change there for the Bering and the Aleutian chain other than this low pressure system moving up with a mix of rain and snow. Should stay south of the chain still for the Aleutians on Saturday. Low pressure system on Saturday will begin, the upper low will move off to the north and east in the Beaufort Sea area, and the low pressure system will begin to shift east. So we expect another round of snow as this push from this upper level wave forces more moisture up across this frontal boundary. So another shot of snow through the day on Saturday. Like I said, Snow totals across the Alaska Range Denali should be between 10 to 14 inches, 4 to 8 inches across the eastern interior, and 4 to 8 inches across the Kenai, with higher totals along the Chugach Mountains perhaps, and the Prince William Sound and Valdez will see snow between 4 to 8 inches. Across the eastern half of the Gulf and the southeast, they'll continue to see another round of rain yet again on Saturday as another front pushes on up through the southeast. So lots of wind changes for the southeastern locations. Taking a look at the temperatures today, they did have the warmest temperatures, with temperatures reaching up to 48 degrees across Petersburg, and the areas down here saw lots of rain between 1.5 to 2.5 inches in the last 24 hours. Petersburg had over 4 inches, so they are having a break from the heavier rains and probably only going to see between 1/2 to 1 inch of a rain overnight tonight. Across the northern Gulf areas, the temperatures had reached up into the upper to mid 40s, upper 30s to mid 40s, and then very quick change, cold temperatures as you went inland up to Eagle. Temperatures were down in the single digits, with the coldest temperatures across the central interior dropping well below zero, minus 25 to minus 35 degrees. And then Huslia saw minus 36 degrees during the afternoon hours. We had minus 10 to minus 11 degrees across the North Slope area, and back towards the northwest there was a slow climb towards the Seward Peninsula, just near zero, and then it dropped again across the Seward Peninsula, with temperatures remaining all below zero all across the southwest. The Alaska Peninsula saw a mix of temperatures, extremes from 10 degrees all the way out to 30 degrees across the peninsula, and the Bering is floating around the lower to mid 20s, with the rest of the Aleutian chain in the mid 30s. So temperatures overnight tonight aren't going to change that much, except get slightly colder across the interior areas, dropping down well below zero along the North Slope in the minus 20 range, so colder temperatures. Nearly steady overnight for the Bering in the lower 20s, with lower 30s across the Aleutian chain. And the Alaska Peninsula, a quick change of temperatures across the western Gulf in the mid 30s, with near 40 degrees overnight for the southeast. Warming trend for tomorrow, well, it's not going to be notable, and probably staying a bit cooler across those western locations. However, those winds should taper off, giving more of a temperature closer to 0 to minus 10 degrees across much of the state, with minus 20s across the central interior. Slightly warmer across the south central area in the lower 20s, southwest in the single digits, and across the Alaska Peninsula near 30 to all the way out through the Aleutian chain, possibly in the mid 30s. So across the southwest, expect another warm day in the mid 40s. Let's take a look at your flying weather for tomorrow. Across much of the Gulf areas, we're going to see MVFR and IFR conditions extending all across the eastern areas of the state, as that moisture advects to the north into the colder regime across the coastal areas, and then MVFR conditions and possible IFR just off the west coast here, and MVFR across much of the Bering. So as we look at your passes in more depth, we have MVFR conditions for Anatuvik and also Adigan Pass. We'll see Lake Clark and Merrill Pass right on that line with VFR through the day. Rainy Pass will be VFR, Windy will be IFR, Isabel IFR to MVFR, Mentasta Pass will be MVFR as well. Tanita will be IFR, and Portage will be IFR. Chilkoot and White Pass should be IFR and improve to MVFR through the day. Freezing levels are draped across the southeast on the northern areas there from the Klondike Highway back towards the Alaska Peninsula, and draped across the southern areas of the Bering. And then we climb from 2,000 to 6,000 feet with the levels being highest in the southeastern Gulf area. And then looking at your icing for tomorrow, mainly along the frontal system, low pressure in the western Gulf, possible moderate conditions spreading up into the Alaska range there. And then below 4,000 feet across the eastern areas of the state, below 6,000 towards the southeast and northern Gulf, and below 5,000 for the areas around the Alaska Peninsula. The jet stream is becoming a little bit more amplified just south of the Alaska Peninsula. Very strong jet is about 160 knots just to our west. And at the surface, we have a low pressure system there at the Alaska Peninsula. We have the strongest winds out of the north. behind the system, and out of the south between 30 and 35 knots, with stronger winds 45 to 55 knots across the southeast. Change of direction across this state around the low pressure sitting in the northeastern Beaufort seacoast, and then across the Bering, mainly lighter winds here between 15 and 30 knots across the Bering. And similar pattern at the 3,000 foot level with high pressure there in the western Bering, and low pressure here. We have the 40 to 50 knot range across the eastern Gulf and southeast. Southerly flow across the eastern areas of the state, with a northerly flow behind the low pressure systems between 25 to 30 knots. And looking at your turbulence for tomorrow, that brings us to problems across the southeast below 6,000 with possible widespread moderate conditions there in the southeast near the Dixon entrance, Beaufort seacoast below 4,000 feet, and along the western coast where it might be a little bit gustier in the morning and then improve during the day. Also, occasional widespread moderate conditions expected during the early part of the day through the Alaska Peninsula, but below 4,000 feet for the chain. So we'll be back in just a moment with your marine forecast.
All hail the king. Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. If your favorite planet is Jupiter, have we got a show for you?
That's right, James. Jupiter is in such a great location for viewing right now. We've devoted this episode to the largest planet in our solar system.
Plus, you'll get to see Jupiter at its brightest and biggest in just a few weeks. Let's show you. Okay, we have our skies set for 9 p.m. any night this week. If you look toward the east, you'll see Jupiter above what looks like a backwards question mark. These are the stars marking the head of Leo the Lion.
To be sure you found Leo, simply look to the northeast and you'll find the 4 stars that mark the bowl of the Big Dipper. Using Megrez and Phecda, the 2 stars opposite the pointer stars, shoot an arrow from north to south, and you'll land smack dab on the head of Leo.
Jupiter is the bright, non-twinkling light just above the head of Leo the Lion. Jupiter is not only the largest planet in our solar system, but its gravity is so strong that it's sometimes referred to as the solar system's vacuum cleaner.
Jupiter's gravity attracts nearby asteroids and other small solar system bodies, and it has been known to dramatically change the orbits of inbound comets, which can shorten or lengthen the amount of time it takes for the comet to orbit the Sun.
In July 1994, fragments of comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 collided with Jupiter, providing the first direct observation of a collision between 2 solar system objects.
The planet Jupiter has been observed in the sky since antiquity. The ancient Romans named it after the king of their gods, whom the Greeks referred to as Zeus.
Babylonian astronomers have records of Jupiter dating back to the 7th century BC. In his book, The Almagest, Greek astronomer Claudius Ptolemy used Jupiter's motion with respect to the Earth to refine his Earth-centered model of the solar system.
By doing this, Ptolemy showed that Jupiter took almost 12 years to make a complete circuit of the sky, which we now know as the amount of time it takes Jupiter to orbit the Sun.
In 1610, Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei studied Jupiter using a telescope and is credited with discovering the 4 largest moons of Jupiter: Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. The motions of these moons around Jupiter provided Galileo with an example supporting Nicholas Copernicus's view of a sun-centered solar system. Because if you look at Jupiter and its moons, they do look a lot like a miniature version of our solar system.
Astronomers Giovanni Cassini and Robert Hooke both noticed a large red spot on Jupiter during their telescopic observations in the 1660s. This spot, affectionately called the Great Red Spot, is so large that you could fit the planets Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars inside of it. Speaking of size, as planets go, Jupiter is enormous. If Jupiter were hollow, you could fit over 1,000 Earths inside it, and it has over 120 times the surface area of the Earth. In more down-to-earth terms, if Jupiter were the size of a basketball, Earth would be about the size of a small marble.
Jupiter also spins very fast. Of all the planets in the solar system, Jupiter has the shortest day, lasting only 9.8 hours, which means that when Jupiter rises at sunset during the winter months, when the sky is dark for more than 12 hours, in the course of only one night, you can actually see the entire surface of the planet.
This rapid spinning has caused Jupiter to take on an M&M shape. And because Jupiter is not a solid body, Jupiter's atmosphere actually spins faster at the equator than it does at the poles, making the clouds form the stripes we've come to know and love.
And lastly, of all the planets, Jupiter has the strongest and largest magnetic field. The Juno space probe is on its way to Jupiter right now to study the planet's magnetic field. And believe it or not, the solar wind causes this field to extend away from Jupiter to almost the orbit of Saturn.
So, get outside and gaze upon the king of the planets.
It's easy to do when you keep looking up.
All right, and now let's look down towards the ice. Cook Inlet here, we're going to see some ice growing with this colder air advection over the next few days, so be on the lookout for that. We still have unstable ice across the Norton Sound area, and just be cautious all along the coastal areas as we are coming out of a warmer period. Still ice along the north areas, and it is going to continue to grow to the south. So be on the lookout for growing ice in the coming days. Now back over to the southeast, we'll see winds tomorrow out of the south and easterly direction. Small craft across much of the inner channels here, 25 to 30 knots. Gales across your outer waters, mainly 35 to 40 knots, a little bit lighter speeds as you head to the north. And across the inner channels, waves will be between 4 and 6 feet. Looking at your outer waters, between 15 and 21 feet for Friday, heading into your Saturday forecast. The general flow will be out of the south direction. Some changes with northerly flow snuck in there during the day with passing low pressure systems. Small crafts across the inner channels with as you get towards the Dixon entrance, gale warning there for your Saturday, and then gale warning just across the eastern areas of the, as you head towards the north, we have some small craft advisories with just the gale to the south. And then seas will be between 15 and 18 feet, inner waters between 4 and 10 feet. And then for your western Gulf Coast areas, expect winds to be lighter on Friday out of the south direction, across the inlet out of the north, and small craft for much of the area. Seas here will be between 3 and 7 feet, across the Prince William Sound 3 feet, and then the western Gulf waters between 13 and 15 feet. A little bit higher wind speeds across the Barren Islands, gale warning here for Saturday, and winds will generally be out of the north and westerly direction, except the northern Gulf area out of the south direction. Seas between 10 and 12 feet across the western Gulf, Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet 2 feet, and then as you head towards the Shelikof Strait between 5 to 10 feet. Looking at your Alaska Peninsula, northerly direction, gale warnings for much of the area between 5 to 8 to 15 feet across the Bering side, 13 to 15 feet with higher gusts along the southern areas, and Bering will see some freezing spray that day. Now Saturday, a northerly direction, small craft advisory much of the area between 7 to 9 feet on the Bering side and 9 to 11 on the Pacific side. Freezing spray may be an issue for the southern Bering once again. Now across the Aleutians, expect stronger winds on Friday with 35 to 40 knots across the eastern areas, a lighter speed all out of the northwest, around 15 knots towards Shimia. Across the Bering, expect seas between 15 to 18 feet, except out towards the west, 11 feet. Along the Pacific side, 14 to 16 feet. On Saturday, lighter wind speeds will be from the east and northerly direction, and then the seas will be between 8 and 12 feet on Saturday. Looking at your western coastal areas, gale warnings across just south of the Nunivak Island at 35 knots, all northerly, like I said, across the area, and then we'll see seas between 5 to 12 feet. Looking at your Saturday forecast, we will see pretty much the same flow, and it's going to be out of the north and northeast around 15, a little bit lighter to 25 knots just south of Nunivak Island. And across the Arctic and northwestern coast, We'll see a flow between 15 and 20 knots across the area, change of direction out of the west as you head towards the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Saturday, mostly light speeds between 10 and 20 knots north to west direction, with a little bit stronger winds in the eastern Beaufort Sea once again. Just to recap your weather for tonight: increased snow across the south central and the eastern interior areas, while the southeast holds on to the rain. And the next system will be pushing up through tonight into the southern areas of the Gulf of Alaska. Mix of rain across the Kodiak Island interior, icy patchy fog across the west and northwest, and then patchy fog across the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and also some light shower activity in those areas. A quick Friday recap: snow intensity will increase overnight tonight and continue through Friday. A little break during the day. More rain for the southeast through the Gulf areas, change over to snow in Kodiak Island, colder temperatures seeping through your Saturday forecast. Stay updated on the winter weather advisories and warnings across the eastern interior through south central, and we'll hope to see you back tomorrow night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.